Hello there, this is L24 World News Program. I'm Abdurrahim Kashour and this is our top headlines. At least 19 children and 2 teachers were killed Tuesday when a gunman opened fire in Texas elementary school, according to the Texas Department of Public Safety. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has said that he was only willing to talk directly to Russian President Vladimir Putin and not via intermediators. South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff said early on Wednesday that North Korea fired 3 missiles toward waters off North Korea's eastern coast after one another. Pakistan government bans Imran Khan's mega rally, launches crackdown on his supporters. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. First in our news, Texas has been exposed to another mass shooting in the U.S. where 19 children and 2 teachers were shot dead by gunmen whose motives were unknown. Islam Sidon, what follow?
Following the mass shooting of Buffalo supermarket in New York, Texas has fallen to another bloodshed. 19 school children and 2 teachers were killed by an 18-year-old gunman who started shooting them with a rifle before he was killed by the cops.
Still working on this active investigation. Once we're able to provide information to the families, we will do so first and foremost, obviously. Our priorities is to get information to our families and give them some information. So please bear with us in regards to that.
According to officials, the killer shot his grandmother who survived before fleeing and crashing his car near Robb Elementary School in Uvalde in Texas.
But I'm here on this floor to beg, to literally get down on my hands and knees and beg my colleagues. Find a path forward here.
The children, whose ages ranged from 7 to 10, were victims to the shooting, which is seen as the deadliest in Texas and the U.S. for nearly a decade, and has prompted President Joe Biden to call for Americans to confront the country's gun lobby and pressure Congress to tighten gun laws, which repeatedly fail in the face of strong Republican-led opposition.
Why are we willing to live with this carnage? Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone to have the courage to deal with it and stand up to the lobbies? It's time to turn this pain into action. For every parent, for every citizen in this country, we have to make it clear to every elected official in this country, it's time to act. Another massacre, Uvalde, Texas, an elementary school. Beautiful, innocent, 2nd, 3rd, 4th graders.
The massacre was the most fatal school shooting since the gunman killed 26 people, including 20 children, at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut in December 2012.
I've seen interviews today with some of the parents of, parents who've lost children to such, terrible, terrible events. And obviously it'll reopen again a debate in the US about their gun laws.
According to University of Michigan research, firearms became the leading cause of death for the U.S. children and teenagers starting in 2020, which surpassed motor vehicle accidents.
In our other topic on news, in response to North Korea's newest missiles examination and after U.S. President Joe Biden ended his first trip to Asia, South Korea and U.S. held combined live-fire drills on Wednesday into the Sea of the Korean Peninsula. The GCS said, and U.S. military statements confirmed those launches. In the same contest, North Korea has fired 3 ballistic missiles off its east coast on Wednesday at about 6 a.m. local time, including a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile, as reported by South Korea and Japan. The test comes hours after Joe Biden left the region following the long trip in which he pledged to protect South Korea and Japan. To a different matter now, a teenage Palestinian was shot in the head by the Zionist forces early on Wednesday after they attacked the occupied West Bank city of Nablus, as reported by the Palestinian Health Ministry. The Zionists tried to justify the terrible act, saying that the Palestinians throw rocks at soldiers. The Palestinian Education Ministry condemned the killing in a statement and stressed the need to data the occupation and hold it accountable for its heinous crimes. In other world news, Ireland called meeting of Security Council today, Sunday, on the issue of protection of journalists, highlighting the brutal killing of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Al Jazeera's Washington bureau chief has called on the UN Security Council to ensure the protection of journalists, urging an independent and transparent probe into the killing of the network's veteran reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, after media exposed new evidence that suggests the journalist was shot dead in a targeted attack by Zionist forces.
In many situations, the Security Council agenda, journalists continue to be attacked. Less than 2 weeks ago, in Jenin, in the occupied Palestinian territory, Shireen Abu Akleh was killed while wearing a blue press vest and a helmet.
Or as far as the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh, the expectation in the Middle East is that the Security Council would set up a body to investigate effectively what happened to Shireen Abu Akleh.
To the Russia-Ukraine fight now, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said 3 months of war in Ukraine is 3 months of war crimes by the Russian occupiers. He added that the occupiers want to destroy everything in the Donbass. In this context, Kiev urged the West to deliver more weapons.
Now, the situation in the Donbass is extremely difficult. All the forces of the Russian army was sent there for the offensive. The occupiers want to destroy everything here.
More on the situation on the ground now. The Russian military campaign in Ukraine has entered its most active phase 3 months after the start of this military offensive. Russian forces are trying to besiege Ukrainian forces in 3 cities in the Donbass region. Hussein Burkan on Watch Follow.
The Ukrainian war has entered its 4th month with no sign of political solution in sight, while the Russian forces are continuing to intensify their military operations in Donbass as they seek to encircle 3 towns in the region, which is witnessing extensive Russian progress. Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine managed to face the Russian offense for 3 months, but the sacrifice was huge.
We must always remember that we withstood these 3 months thanks to the tens of thousands of counterattacks carried out by all those who defend the state, and at the cost of tens of thousands of lives of Ukrainians killed by the occupants.
In turn, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stated that Moscow will have to fight a long time in eastern Ukraine to achieve the objectives of its intervention, due to the pauses it is making to evacuate civilians.
Ceasefires and humanitarian corridors are put in place to allow residents to leave encircled settlements. Of course, this slows the pace of the offensive, but this is done deliberately in order to avoid civilian casualties. We continue the special military operation until all goals are achieved, regardless of the huge Western aid to the Kiev regime and the unprecedented sanctions pressure.
The Russian army is still seeking to achieve military victories in Ukrainian territories, while it has modified its plans and withdrawn its forces from the northern regions to focus on liberating the Donbass region, according to Moscow.
Still with the Russia-Ukraine fight, after nearly 3 months of Russia's offensive on Ukraine's second largest city, the Kharkiv metro, which has long served as a bomb shelter for residents, resumed operation on Tuesday. Russian forces appear for a moment to have given up trying to take Kharkiv to concentrate more troops in the south and the east, while fighting continues. In Kherson, the only region of Ukraine totally conquered by the Russian army, the administration put in place by Moscow is loudly calling for annexation. Journalists joined a press trip to the southern Kherson region organized by the Russian Defense Ministry, accompanied by troops in armored vehicles. To other Russia-Ukraine related news, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has declared a new state of emergency in the country, citing the conflict in neighboring Ukraine. Speaking in a video message, Viktor Orban said the current situation in Ukraine poses a threat to the physical security of his country. According to the Hungarian Prime Minister, the state of emergency, which is set to begin at midnight, enables the government to react while all available instruments to protect Hungary and Hungarian families.
A világ egy gazdasági válság küszöbén áll.
The world is on the brink of an economic crisis. Hungary must stay out of this war, and it must protect families' financial security. This requires room for maneuver and immediate action.
Képességre van szükség. A kormány az alaptörvényben biztosított jogával élve.
The government, exercising its right under the basic law, will declare a war emergency from midnight. We introduced a similar emergency situation to fight the pandemic. This also allows the government to react immediately, and in all situations to protect Hungary and Hungarian families. I will inform you tomorrow about our first decisions.
Holnap tájékoztatni fogom önöket az első döntéseinkről.
Former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder said on Tuesday he had refused his nomination to the supervisory board of the Russian gas giant Gazprom. On Tuesday, Gazprom has confirmed its nomination of Schröder for a seat on its supervisory board. Last week, EU lawmakers have passed a resolution urging sanctions on Schröder and other EU political figures with financial ties to Moscow. A Russian court ruled the sentence of 9 years of custody of the main opponent, Alexei Navalny. Navalny is already serving 2.5 years in prison East Moscow for violating parole and old fraud charges. Russia's opposition leader will be transferred to a strict regime penal colony with harsh conditions and few family visits. Despite the conflict in Ukraine having topped the worries at the annual World Economic Forum, the economic situation in the world is facing now an unresolved pandemic, and the current growing climate risk were all discussed in the 2022 Davos meeting. Nabil Khazini has more to tell.
Near the mountains of the small Swiss city of Davos, and with security tightening around the venue for the World Economic Conference, discussing war overwhelmed the initial reason for the meeting, despite the slowdown of the global economy. But in the context of security challenges Europe currently faces, the look and significance of the 2022 World Economic Forum have totally changed.
President Putin's war on Ukraine has shattered peace in Europe. It is really a game changer, not just for European security, but for the global order.
Air Force jets will again circle above to enforce a no-fly zone on the sky of the calm Swiss town, something Volodymyr Zelensky has constantly asked for in his country. Now, he asks for more European unity in favor of Ukraine.
I have a question for the European Union. Tell me, please, is there unity in the European continent regarding Ukraine, regarding the future of Ukraine? I don't see it yet.
But when the IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva took to the stage, there was a room for economy to be discussed in a year where economic crises around the world are to be thoroughly analyzed.
We are looking down this 2022. It is going to be a tough year. We have commodity price shock in many countries, and the particular shock I want to bring your attention to is food price shock.
Following the conference, there was still more to say. It was the time for climate activist Vanessa Nakate to highlight the effects of the war in Ukraine on climate change on the most vulnerable.
And it's really important that we remain relevant to this cause because the climate crisis is still impacting so many people, especially in communities where we're coming from. So we have to make sure that we don't lose focus on this, especially in such big moments when leaders come together, business leaders who actually influence this crisis.
Diverse knowledge, strengths and perspectives from different sides to quickly turn new knowledge into collective action are the way the World Economic Forum claims to find solutions to global challenges. However, the Russians, who are important actors in the forum, were banned to attend the ThinkFest.
According to a statement by the Presidency of the Republic of Algeria, the President Abdelmajid Tebboune starts a 3-day state visit to Italy at the invitation of his Italian counterpart Sergio Mattarella. The visit is of a top importance in strengthening bilateral relations in many fields, especially the economic one. The visit also aims at starting a new dynamic for dialogue and strategic cooperation between the two neighboring countries. To Asia now, Pakistan's government has banned a planned protest march called by former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who is demanding fresh election as political and economic crisis deepen in the South Asian nation. The ban was announced on Tuesday by Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah at a news briefing hours after a policeman was shot and killed during a crackdown on Khan's supporters across the country. Beijing ramped up quarantine efforts to end its month-old COVID-19 outbreak as a new signs of frustration emerged in Shanghai. The zero-COVID policy of the world's second biggest economy doesn't seem to be effective to eradicate the stubborn virus. The capital reported 48 new cases, with Shanghai reporting fewer than 500, but the government insists on thorough measures to cut virus transmissions.
Although we are still free, we can go out if we are not in the risk control area. But when I go out, there is nothing to do and no place to have fun. Life is still very boring. Even if not all places are under lockdown, it is no different from being quarantined at home.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was facing mounting pressure on Tuesday ahead of release of a report by senior civil servant Sue Gray into lockdown-breaking events in Downing Street, which reignited opposition accusation that he breached his own COVID-19 lockdown rules and calls for his resignation again. Johnson's spokesman declined to comment directly on the November 30th events, saying the Prime Minister would answer questions in Parliament once the Sue Gray report had been published. Moldovan authorities have detained former President Igor Dodon on corruption accusation. The announcement by the Prosecutor Office Generals came after a search of Dodon's home, office and cars and turned up various luxury items, foreign currency, receipts and other documentation. Dozens of Dodon supporters also gathered outside Parliament demanding the government's resignation. The Libyan Navy claimed that in a statement on Tuesday that it had rescued 30 migrants the day before off the coast of Melita and recovered the bodies of 4 others who had drowned. 12 of the migrants rescued are Syrians and 13 are Egyptians. According to the source, 3 others are missing and fear death. Leaked documents accessed by various organizations shed light on the horrific conditions inside Xinjiang interment campus used by the Chinese police to detain Uyghur Muslims. A UN rights chief is set to visit Xinjiang on Tuesday as part of a 6-day tour. China has called the visit a chance to clarify what it calls misinformation. However, Uyghurs around the world have raised concerns that the UN's access will be restricted and its finding on human rights abuses will be obscured by China. In southern Malaysia, high-tech agriculture is used to optimize the cultivation of the durian plantain, the strong aromatic fruit famous all over Asia. Zarfarjani has more to tell.
With drones, sensors and adapted irrigation, a durian plantation in southern Malaysia has turned to high-tech agriculture to optimize the cultivation of this strong aromatic fruit. In an increasingly competitive market, Malaysian agricultural company Top Fruits Plantations has turned to high-tech methods to improve its yield. In the state of Johor, south of Malaysia, Executive Director Tan Susian, who has been growing durians for about 30 years, explains how high-tech process help in the cultivation of the fruit.
What is important, once you give what is being needed, the fruit will be much more consistent, the shape will be better, and most important, the aroma will be better because you will be able to be more scientifically control it.
The technologies allow farmers to more accurately measure how much fertilizer and water to use for each tree.
Of course, I put in a lot of sensors. So all these sensors actually tell me more about my trees and what my trees and my soils needs.
The durian plantation is grown in Southeast Asia, whereas its admirers are particularly numerous in China.
With all this technology that we have today, we need to utilize it and also maximize it for our own production, maximizing our production, especially in our quality and quantity as well.
Fans of this egg-shaped fruit admire its sweet and sour flavor and creamy golden flesh, but for its critics, it is the most stinky fruit in the world, with a persistent smell compared to rotten fruit, which is prohibited in many hotels and public transport in the region.
And now we have to reach the end of our news. Let's have a reminder for our main top stories. At least 19 children and 2 teachers were killed Tuesday when a gunman opened fire in Texas elementary school, according to the Texas Department of Public Safety. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has said that he was only willing to talk directly to Russian President Vladimir Putin and not via intermediators. South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff said early on Wednesday that North Korea fired 3 missiles toward waters off North Korea's eastern coast after one another. Pakistan government bans Imran Khan's mega rally, launches crackdown on his supporters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.